Today on July 15th, Archangel Michael says, the name you blocked in your phone is the one heaven has been repeating all day. Today, on July 15th, something has shifted in the spiritual realm. Archangel Michael is speaking directly to your heart with a message soaked in divine urgency. It is not a coincidence that you've been feeling unsettled, as if someone's name keeps echoing through your soul. You thought you blocked it out. You thought you ended it. But heaven hasn't stopped whispering it since dawn. That name, the one you deleted, ignored, buried, is rising again. And it's not just to torment you. It's to redeem something that was never fully understood. This is not a message for everyone. It's only for the one who knows exactly which name I'm talking about. If your heart just skipped a beat, it's you. Archangel Michael is not speaking lightly today. He's revealing that there's a divine loop happening in your life, an unresolved connection that refuses to be silenced. The name you blocked isn't just a person. It's a mirror, a wood, a prophecy. You thought moving on meant cutting off, but heaven says this is not over in the way you think. This message carries spiritual implications beyond your comprehension. That name was linked to a test, and that test is being retaken in this hour. You're being watched, not by the person, but by the angels assigned to your destiny. And they are waiting to see what you'll do next. Heaven has a way of repeating what we refuse to face. That's why Archangel Michael has been assigned to intervene. He's the one who draws the sword of truth and slices through confusion. Today, he's pulling back the veil on a connection you once deemed toxic, but heaven now calls unfinished. You're something still lingering, and it's not emotion, it's assignment. That blocked name isn't calling you. It's being echoed in heaven's halls. And the repetition is not noise. It's a summons. What you blocked to protect yourself might have also blocked a door that was never meant to close entirely. Michael is ordering you to look again, not with your emotions, but with your discernment. There are spiritual contracts you made in silence. Moments where you begged for relief, cried for freedom, and promised you'd never return. But now, Archangel Michael says the time has come to revisit, not reopen, the sealed chapter. Because inside that blocked name is not just memory. There's an encrypted piece of your calling. This is not about romance. This is about revelation. You're being positioned to see why that name still stirs heaven's attention. Don't panic. Just prepare. You're not being haunted. You're being called. You tried everything to forget. You burned the photos, erased the messages, blocked the number, and rewrote the story in your mind until it no longer hurt. But the whisper never stopped. Not in your quiet moments. Not in your dreams. Not when you stared at the ceiling at 2:17 a.m., wondering why you still felt something when that name crossed your spirit. It's not because you're weak. It's because something deeper than memory is still vibrating through the corridors of your soul. Archangel Michael says you didn't just block a person. You blocked a spiritual echo that was still unfinished. And now, heaven is repeating it, louder than ever. The reason you keep feeling that name rise is not random. It's divine. It's not the devil trying to trap you. It's heaven trying to teach you. You passed the emotional test, but you're now entering the revelatory phase. Michael says, do not confuse silence for closure. Yes, because there's no contact doesn't mean there's no consequence. That name is being whispered over and over for a reason. It's not nostalgia, it's a nudge. A signal from your destiny that something is still pending. And heaven refuses to let you move forward until it is acknowledged, not avoided. Type I am rising to get the blessing 4896. This name is not about rekindling. It's about reclaiming. You left a piece of your authority buried beneath that chapter. And while you thought you escaped, you've actually been circling the same emotional mountain ever since. Archangel Michael reveals, cycles repeat when revelation is incomplete. You thought time would heal what you never faced. But now, it's July 15th, and the clock of heaven is ringing. Your soul knows what your mind resists. There's power in understanding why you had to endure that connection, and why heaven won't let you bury it without wisdom. The spiritual realm does not respect human avoidance. What you run from in the natural continues in the spirit. And now, Archangel Michael has been assigned to sever what you couldn't comprehend. But before he cuts the final tie, he must show you what was entangled within it. The name you blocked is connected to a chapter that holds both your pain and your preparation. You keep asking God for clarity, but clarity only comes when you face what you tried to ignore. This is that moment. Divine light is being shined on the shadow. Type I am anointed to get blessing 5832. That name is not just a person. It's a prophecy. A puzzle piece. A trigger sent to initiate your awareness. Heaven is not asking you to reconnect, but to recognize. You have power over this moment, but you mustn't waste it by pretending you're fine. Michael says your spirit is being prepared for an assignment you did expect, and the residue of that name must be dealt with. When heaven repeats something, it's because your next season depends on what you do with it. Ignoring this sign will only delay what's next, but obedience will unlock alignment. You didn't ask for this message, but it found you because your soul was already vibrating in response. The energy around you is shifting because you've been chosen to break something, not just feel it. That name carries a residue that must be purged with truth, not resentment. Michael is with you now, standing at your side, sword drawn, voice clear. He says, face what you blocked, not with longing but with clarity. Because the moment you acknowledge the spiritual link, not the emotional chaos, you will unlock a power that's been buried inside you for far too long. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 6624. You didn't mean to shut the door forever. You were just trying to breathe. You were drowning in confusion, betrayal, chaos, and the only way to feel whole again was to cut off what kept pulling you under. Blocking that name was your last act of control. But Archangel Michael says heaven never asked you to sever, only to surrender. That name, that soul, was never just another person. They were a divine checkpoint, a gatekeeper to something deeper. And even though you blocked them on earth, the spiritual portal never closed. Heaven is still holding that door open, because something holy never made it through. You keep wondering why nothing feels complete, why every breakthrough falls just short, why joy visits but doesn't stay. Archangel Michael says it's because the wound you ignored is where your oil is hidden. The blocked name was not your enemy. It was your mirror. Until you see that reflection for what it was, you'll keep facing blurred blessings and misaligned doors. This isn't about contact. This is about clarity. Heaven is reminding you that your purpose cannot bypass the pain that birthed it. You didn't just walk away. You unknowingly walked past a key. Type I am rising to get the blessing 7211. There's an anointing that only comes through reconciliation, not with the person, but with the purpose of their presence. You asked for promotion. You prayed for elevation. But all of heaven stood still until you returned to this moment, not to reopen, but to reclaim. Archangel Michael says you must recover the piece of you that was left behind, the part that still trembles when their name echoes. Because the trembling isn't trauma, it's a signal. That name unlocked a version of you no one else could reach. And now, heaven is demanding that version return, fully, boldly, spiritually aware. Do not mistake silence for completion. Just because you haven't heard their voice doesn't mean the lesson is over. Some chapters don't close with peace, they close with power. And that power is still suspended, waiting for your spirit to reach up and take it. Heaven will not hand you what you are unwilling to face. Archangel Michael says today, on July 15th, that name you blocked was the one called out in heaven's assembly. Not as a mistake, but as a marker. A reminder of where your next level stalled. Now is your chance to restart, on higher ground. I'm anointed to get blessing 5982. You may feel the old emotions stirring again. But this time, don't run. Let the truth rise. Let the pain speak. Not to torment you, but to train you. Heaven is retracing your steps for a reason. There's divine strategy in this discomfort. You keep asking for breakthrough while ignoring the breach. That name was more than pain. It was a prophecy wrapped in imperfection. Archangel Michael says it was the broken piece of a holy puzzle, and now it's time to fit it back into place. Not in your past, but in your understanding. Some people come into our lives to teach us how deep our soul can go. And once that depth is touched, it cannot be undone. The name you blocked was a soul earthquake, not just a heartbreak. And Archangel Michael says what quaked still echoes in heaven. This is why angels are on assignment. This is why your spirit won't settle. That vibration is not from memory, it's from mission. You are being summoned not to feel again, but to finish what was divinely started. This moment is not random. It is reckoning. If this message has encouraged or inspired you, consider showing your support with a super thanks. Contributions of up to $20 go a long way in helping us continue creating content that uplifts and empowers. You can also support us directly through PayPal by clicking the support here link in the video description. Every donation helps us keep sharing messages that make a difference. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. Join us for ongoing prophetic insight, spiritual encouragement, and timely words to keep you walking in step with heaven's purpose. I am chosen to get the blessing 7770. Closure is a word we cling to when our soul can't make sense of a goodbye. But Archangel Michael says today, heaven is interrupting your version of closure, because it was never complete. What you called moving on was actually spiritual avoidance. You shut the door, but never let the fire die. And that's why the smoke still rises every time you hear that name. Avocado didn't cancel the spiritual contract. The energy still flows. The vibration still lingers. The emotional chapter ended, but the divine assignment has not. And heaven is pressing on that truth right now. You've been wrestling with this strange sense of restlessness. You're not sure why your thoughts drift to someone you haven't seen in ages. You're not sure why the past feels so present. But Archangel Michael says it's because heaven has hit rewind in your spirit, not to punish, but to reveal. You blocked that name to protect your peace, but heaven is now revealing that within that same name lies a part of your promise. Not the person themselves, but what the encounter was meant to unlock. You buried what you didn't understand. Now God is unearthing it. I'm rising to get the blessing 8459. There's something about divine connections that defy time. You think it's over, and heaven says it's just now making sense. You assumed it was just pain, but heaven says it was prophecy in disguise. Archangel Michael is showing you the reason, the name, is repeating is because you still haven't recognized what it triggered in you. The fire, the awakening, the spiritual depth. It didn't come from comfort. It came from conflict. And heaven only uses what cuts deeply enough to carve you into destiny. That name was heaven's tool, and your soul still recognizes the shaping. That's why your spirit stirs when the thought returns. Not because you're stuck, but because your soul is still processing. There's no shame in that. Archangel Michael says it's a signal of growth. You outgrew the emotional tie, but the spiritual insight still awaits. This is not about going back. This is about going deeper. God wants you to see what he saw. That name carried a mirror to your calling. You were so focused on the storm that you missed the divine symbols hidden in the wreckage. But now, your eyes are being opened. Type I am anointed to get blessing 9113. Sometimes when heaven has more to say, it speaks in echoes. And that name is echoing because something was left unsaid, not between you and them, but between you and God. You're being summoned to finish a divine dialogue that was paused when you chose silence. Michael says the silence wasn't wrong, it was sacred. But it was only meant to be temporary. Now, the heavens are roaring again, and they are using the name you blocked as the trumpet. You're being drawn into a moment of divine reflection, because what's coming next cannot be built on spiritual fragments. Heaven cannot bless a foundation that's cracked beneath unspoken truth. That name, that energy, that memory must be faced not for them but for you. Because if you carry the weight of unfinished pain into your next chapter, it will distort everything you touch. Archangel Michael is warning you. Clarity must precede calling. And this clarity begins with letting heaven complete what your hands tried to cancel. You didn't fail. You survived. But now it's time to understand why you had to. This message is divine surgery, cutting away confusion and leaving only sacred understanding behind. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 6622. There was a time that name made your heart leap, not from fear or pain, but from deep recognition. Before the chaos, before the endings, before the silence, that name awakened something in you that had been buried under years of numbness. It wasn't just love. It was a spark of your original spirit calling back to you. Archangel Michael says the reason heaven keeps echoing that name is because it was the first to remind you of who you truly were. Not in your weakness, but in your rawest power. That name didn't just enter your life. It broke the seal on your spiritual awareness. You thought you were remembering a person, but really, you were remembering your purpose. That name pulled something sacred from your bones. Something even you had forgotten you carried. Heaven isn't bringing this name back to torture you. It's bringing it back to reawaken your authority. That person may never return. They may never apologize. But the divine flame they helped ignite is not theirs to own. It's yours to reclaim. You bought the contact, but not the calling. And Archangel Michael says that calling is now being resurrected on July 15th with urgency. Type I am rising to get the blessing 7684. You've wondered why your spiritual gifts intensified around that season, why dreams felt clearer, why your intuition sharpened. It wasn't random. That connection was a divine catalyst. Heaven used what looked like emotional entanglement to stretch your perception, to push you beyond comfort and into clarity. Archangel Michael says you were never meant to stay in that connection, but you were meant to awaken from it. And that's why the name is back, not for contact, but for confirmation. A holy reminder of where your breakthrough truly began. We often associate people with pain and overlook the power that came with their presence. Heaven is shifting your lens now. Archangel Michael is pulling back the memory curtain, not to bring back the emotions, but to reveal the transformation. You are not the same person who blocked that name. You're wiser, younger, more spiritually aware. But part of that wisdom came through the fire of that experience. The echo you're hearing is not sentimental. It's sacred. It's a checkpoint, a spiritual breadcrumb reminding you where you met your deeper self. I am anointed to get blessing 8321. There is a prophetic thread tied to that name, not to the person's intentions, but to heaven's strategy. Sometimes God will allow what seems like chaos to pull us into clarity. That name was part of a bigger design, a necessary shaking, a heavenly push that led you out of emotional sleep. And now Archangel Michael says, do not be afraid of the echo. Embrace it. Let it teach you. Let it show you where your strength was birthed. Let it reveal the layers of yourself you once denied. You're not being pulled back. You're being aligned forward. This is how heaven restores what we never knew we lost. Not by reviving the past, but by reclaiming the purpose that was planted inside it. The blocked name was only the shell. The spirit of that encounter is what's still speaking. And until you separate the two, until you discern the divine from the distraction, you'll continue misreading the echo as torment, not instruction. But today, Archangel Michael says your ears are open. Your spirit is ready. The fire you once feared is now your light. Step into it. I am chosen to get the blessing 9901. You've told yourself, I'm over it. You've repeated the affirmation. You've prayed the release prayers. And yet the name returns, not through phone calls or messages, but through flashes in your mind, visions in your sleep, feelings in your chest. Archangel Michael says this isn't emotional backsliding. It's spiritual prompting. Your heart doesn't want to go back, but your soul wants to understand. Because real closure isn't just about walking away. It's about seeing clearly. That name was a divine interruption to who you used to be. And heaven is not done teaching you what it meant. When you blocked that name, you were protecting your emotional boundary. And that was wise. It was survival. It was necessary. But now, on July 15th, Archangel Michael says your spirit is safe enough to look back with new eyes. To face what you ran from without fear of being pulled back into it. This isn't about reconnection. It's about reclamation. You've outgrown the storm, but you never retrieved what it left behind. And in that storm was wisdom, authority, prophetic instruction. What you thought was destruction was actually divine education. I am rising to get the blessing 7472. There are names that haunt us because we never allowed them to heal us. You've been avoiding that name like it still has power. But the real power lies in your perspective. Archangel Michael says the fear will fade when the lesson is complete. And the lesson isn't about who they were. It's about who you became. That name was heaven's wake-up call. It stirred a hunger for discernment. It cracked the mask you were hiding behind. And now, you are being summoned to finish what started, not through conversation, but through revelation. That is why the whisper won't stop. That is why the echo feels louder now. Heaven is aligning your past encounter with your present elevation. But you cannot step into the next spiritual dimension with hidden residue in your soul. Archangel Michael says your spirit must be fully reconciled with your journey. That name is just the symbol. The real work is within. And this is your opportunity to finally see what that name did to your spirit. Not just how it hurt, but how it sharpened, stripped, and sanctified you. That's the closure heaven requires. Type I'm anointed to get blessing 6808. Sometimes your calling can only emerge after your comfort dies. And that name, though painful, was the death of your illusion. You now know what red flags feel like. You now recognize when your spirit shrinks in someone's presence. You now choose alignment over attachment. And all of that was birthed through what you blocked. Archangel Michael says you're not revisiting this to relive it. You're revisiting it to release the final fragment. Out of love, out of longing, but of identity. You still left a piece of yourself in that moment. And now heaven says, retrieve it. You don't have to tell them anything. This isn't about them. It's about heaven's record. Archangel Michael says there are scrolls being opened with your name on them. And the pages must reflect a soul who didn't just survive pain, but mastered purpose. That name you blocked will not haunt you anymore. Because you're not the same. You're not weak. You're not greeting. You are rising. And with every step toward spiritual understanding, heaven shouts your name with honor. The one who faced what others avoided. The one who healed completely. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 9040. You don't speak their name anymore. You've removed it from your mouth, your phone, your photos, your journals, but not from your spirit. And Archangel Michael says that's because your soul still remembers what your mind forced into silence. This isn't obsession. This isn't regression. It's divine remembrance. The soul doesn't operate in linear time. It moves in layers, echoes, and alignment. And when something spiritual stirs that deeply, the imprint is not easily erased. That name holds no emotional power over you now, but its spiritual residue still lingers because your spirit hasn't fully extracted the wisdom it carried. It wasn't just who they were, it was what they awakened in you. The strength you had to find to leave. The prayers you screamed at night. The boundaries you finally enforced. The version of you that emerged after they disappeared. Heaven used that name as a blade to cut off the old you and shape something eternal. Archangel Michael says that's why heaven repeats it, not to rewind, but to remind. That name was heaven's alarm clock. And even now, your soul listens not for reconciliation, but for revelation. What did God try to tell you through them? Type I am rising to get the blessing 8112. The reason the memory feels alive isn't because you want them back. It's because you want your full self back. The parts of you that still tremble when that name is whispered in the quiet. Not because of love loss, but because of truth earned. Archangel Michael says every time your soul flinches, it's trying to speak. It's trying to finish the sentence that never got to land. And until you allow it, the cycle will remain half-closed. Heaven does not deal in emotional suppression. It deals in divine completion. And this is your moment to finally hear it out. Do you remember the moment you blocked that name? Not just the action, but the feeling. The heartbreak mixed with strength. The shaking hands and the resolute mind. Archangel Michael says that moment was sacred. It was the beginning of your spiritual maturity. You stopped chasing false peace and started choosing sacred silence. And that decision triggered a heavenly shift. Angels stood in formation. Demons retreated. And your name was called in divine chambers. That blocked contact marked your graduation. But you never collected the full reward from that battle. Until now. Type I'm anointed to get blessing 9295. This is not about them reaching out again. They may never. And they don't have to. Because this is between you and God. The whisper of their name isn't a hint at their return. It's heaven's way of saying, now that you're strong, go back and collect the mantle you left behind. Archangel Michael says you are no longer the version of yourself who was begging, hoping, or suffering. You are the version who knows who you are. And because of that, you're finally ready to touch the weight of what that experience unlocked in your spirit. You carry spiritual authority because of what you endured. That name may never cross your path again, but its purpose has not expired. There is a spiritual deposit left in the center of your storm, and heaven won't stop whispering until you retrieve it. You think you're done with the lesson, but the final exam is happening now, and it's all internal. How you see yourself, what you believe about that season, whether you'll run from the thought of them or rise with the truth of what God built through them. This is your activation point. If this message has encouraged or inspired you, consider showing your support with a super thanks. Contributions of up to $20 go a long way in helping us continue creating content that uplifts and empowers. You can also support us directly through PayPal by clicking the support here link in the video description. Every donation helps us keep sharing messages that make a difference. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. Join us for ongoing prophetic insight, spiritual encouragement, and timely words to keep you walking in step with heaven's purpose. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 7766. Archangel Michael says pain often guards the gate to purpose. And that name, the one you blocked, wasn't just attached to heartbreak. It was assigned to your ascension. You didn't know it then. You only saw the arguments, the confusion, the emotional collapse. But heaven saw a deeper transaction. Through that shaking, your soul was forced to awaken. That name pulled you to your knees so you'd hear heaven more clearly. The silence after the storm wasn't just for healing. It was for holy instruction. And now the whisper returns, not to reignite, but to remind you of what's waiting through the next gate. You've been standing at the threshold, wondering why breakthrough feels near, but won't manifest. Why your prayers are fierce, but the results feel slow. Archangel Michael says it's because a piece of your spiritual key was dropped back in that season. You left too quickly, not wrongfully, but urgently. And urgency sometimes causes us to forget what we were meant to carry forward. That name is echoing now because heaven is guiding you back, not to the pain, but to the portal. A hidden gate exists within that memory, and your spirit is strong enough now to walk through it. Type I am rising to get the blessing 6533. You don't need to speak to them. You don't need their approval, apology, or presence. What you need is permission from yourself to go back into that memory and retrieve what is yours. That name was never the enemy. It was the envelope. The message was always from heaven. And now, on July 15th, the seal is breaking. You're beginning to realize you weren't just broken by that moment. You were commissioned through it. Every tear was sacred ink. Every silent night, a divine classroom. And Archangel Michael says now is the moment to read what heaven wrote in that pain. Some people were sent to break your illusions, not your soul. You held on to their potential longer than you should have, not realizing their purpose was never permanence. It was pressure. Pressure to wake up. Pressure to find boundaries. Pressure to become spiritually sharp. Archangel Michael reveals that pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to deliver you. And now, heaven wants you to stop associating that name with failure. It was your unlocking. It was your divine detour. And until you see that clearly, you'll resist the power hidden inside the pain. Type I'm anointed to get blessing 8820. There are some gates that only open when your perspective shifts. You've cried enough. You've heard enough. This is the season for clarity. That name may never be restored, but your authority must be. And heaven is using the echo of that name to do it. Archangel Michael says the path forward cannot be fully walked until the past is seen rightly. You didn't just block someone, you blocked a moment that held your fire. You're now being called back into that flame, not to burn but to blaze. To rise from it and carry the heat into your calling. The enemy wanted you to resent that name forever, because resentment keeps you distracted. But heaven wants you to remember it with spiritual eyes, so that you can walk forward with nothing hidden, nothing feared, and nothing left behind. That name was once a wood, but now it can become a weapon in your story, a testimony of transformation, a proof of power. Heaven says you are ready to stand on what once broke you, not shakily but firmly, not bitterly but blessed. Archangel Michael has been guarding this gate, and today he opens it for you. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 7007. Archangel Michael says every spiritual warrior is forged in private battles. And your war, the one that carried that name, wasn't in the open. No one saw the wrestling. No one knew how hard it was to choose silence. And no one felt the screams you buried in your chest when you pressed block. But heaven heard them. The angels stood still when you walked away. Not because you were weak, but because you passed a test of obedience. You chose peace over chaos, spirit over ego, and that decision echoed louder in heaven than any prayer you had ever spoken. But you didn't walk away without cost. You lost pieces of yourself in that fight, pieces of your voice, pieces of your certainty. You questioned your ability to hear from God clearly. If that connection felt so divine, how could it end in devastation? Archangel Michael says that confusion wasn't failure. It was refinement. Heaven wasn't punishing you, it was positioning you. You didn't mishear God. You misunderstood the assignment. That name wasn't your destination. It was your activation. And now, as heaven whispers that name again, it's not for sorrow. It's to finish what that fire started. Type I am rising to get the blessing 6184. You learned to hear heaven in the silence that followed. You learned to discern without confirmation, to pray without response, to obey without applause. That's what that war gave you. You thought the fight was about them, but it was about you. About training your spirit to rise above the noise of your emotions and listen for the still, small voice. And now that you've mastered it, heaven is giving you access to what only the refined can hold. Archangel Michael says the whisper of that name is not regression, it's recognition of how far you've come. Sometimes we think deliverance means never thinking of them again. But heaven defines deliverance as being able to think of them without being moved by pain. Archangel Michael says you are almost there. The echo no longer triggers you. It teaches you. That's how you know you've grown. You can feel it, hear it, remember it, and still stand firm in your spirit. The war taught you more than peace. It taught you posture. Now, you know how to guard your gates, discern your circles, and protect your oil. That name was the battlefield. But you are the victory. Top I'm anointed to get blessing 9333. Do you realize what you survived? Most wouldn't have made it out whole. What you did, you didn't just endure the blow, you learned how to rebuild your temple. Piece by piece. Prayer by prayer. And that's why heaven has kept record. Archangel Michael has written your strength in divine ink. And now the name that once shook you is just a note in the song of your deliverance. It no longer holds your attention. It bows to your authority. Because you didn't bow to it. You overcame. You elevated. You evolved. But the story isn't over until the purpose is fully claimed. That's why it returns. Not to reopen wounds, but to unlock weapons. Your greatest tools have come from your deepest tests. And this test, this name, this war, is your proving ground. The place where heaven knew your name could be trusted in higher places. Archangel Michael says you've shown yourself faithful in the wilderness. And now, the garden is being prepared. But first, you must name what that season taught you, so it no longer stalks you, but serves you. That's divine reversal. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 6628. Heaven always returns what was lost, but rarely in the form you expect. Archangel Michael says the reason that name keeps echoing is not because you need them, but because you need what they unintentionally stole from you. Your voice, your joy, your spiritual confidence, your sense of sacred identity. When you blocked their name, you preserved your peace, but you also buried your boldness. Now, on this holy day, heaven is calling it back. Not the person, the part of you that forgot how powerful it had become in the pain. That name is not returning, but your fire is. Archangel Michael says, look at yourself now. Wiser. Divru. Yarpru. You hear things others miss. You feel shifts in the atmosphere. You discerned hearts behind words. This didn't come through ease. It came through the anguish you once tried to delete. That blocked name wasn't just someone who hurt you. It was the furnace heaven used to refine your discernment. The fire was holy, the pain and purpose. And now the repetition you hear in your soul is not a haunting, it's a heavenly alarm. The alarm that says, rise and take back what they never had the right to keep. Type I am rising to get the blessing 8640. Your spiritual inheritance was never about them. It was buried beneath the battle. That's why the whisper returns when you least expect it, because your soul is now strong enough to claim what was left behind. Heaven doesn't let any sacred lesson stay dormant. Archangel Michael says that every time you feel the weight of that name, you are nearing the final retrieval of a hidden gift, a divine tool, a deeper wisdom, a sharper mantle. The pain they caused may have been unintended, but the growth that followed was undeniably ordained. That's what heaven wants to finish now. You've long stopped waiting for an apology. You're not looking for closure in human terms. But heaven says there is still something unfinished. Not in the story, but in your spirit. A final unlocking. You see, that chapter didn't just affect your heart, it rewired your vision. You started seeing life, people, and God differently. And some of that rewiring was holy, but some of it was self-protection. Archangel Michael says heaven is restoring your ability to hope without fear, to love without armor, to dream without resistance. That name with the lock. This moment is the key. Type I am anointed to get blessing 7217. You've been praying for elevation, for new assignments, for fresh revelation. But heaven can't promote a spirit still anchored to what it refuses to process. That name was once a soul tie. Then it became a soul test. And now it's your soul trophy, if you let it be. Archangel Michael says the trophy doesn't look like revenge or reconciliation. It looks like wisdom. It looks like the power to remember without bleeding, to reflect without breaking. You didn't just survive. They were used to shape the mantle you now carry. And that's why heaven repeats the name, not to pull you back, but to show how far you've come. This is where the cycle ends, where you stop reacting to echoes and start responding to assignments. You were not meant to carry their weight, but you were meant to carry the wisdom they awakened. Archangel Michael says now is the time to write a new ending, not by changing the past, but by claiming what was born from it. That name may have walked with you into the storm, but only you walked out. And you didn't walk out empty. You walked out anointed. Equipped. Ready. That's why heaven won't let it rest until you do. If this message has encouraged or inspired you, consider showing your support with a super thanks. Contributions of up to $20 go a long way in helping us continue creating content that uplifts and empowers. You can also support us directly through PayPal by clicking the Support Here link in the video description. Every donation helps us keep sharing messages that make a difference. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. Join us for ongoing prophetic insight, spiritual encouragement, and timely words to keep you walking in step with heaven's purpose. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 9442. There are names that mark us forever, not because they stayed, but because they triggered transformation. Archangel Michael says that blocked name was the divine knock on the door to your next dimension. It didn't feel holy at the time. It felt like heartbreak, but wrapped inside that pain was the seed of your spiritual authority. You wouldn't be who you are today without that storm. You wouldn't discern what you now see. You wouldn't protect your peace like you do. That name was never meant to remain in your life, but it was always meant to redefine it. You're not haunted. You're being handed something. A mantle. A new awareness. A deeper level of spiritual inheritance. Archangel Michael says heaven keeps echoing that name because your spirit still hasn't fully accepted the promotion it initiated. That moment you blocked them wasn't just closure, it was consecration. You chose sacredness over sentiment, and heaven took note. But now the echo is returning, not to shake you, but to seat you. You're being crowned in a realm your pain opened up, and your ability to carry that crown requires a new depth of understanding about what that name really meant. Type I'm rising to get the blessing 6022. You see, the next level isn't about more money, more people, more opportunities. It's about more clarity. Heaven is increasing your capacity. That's why the name stirs you again. It's testing your readiness to carry the next mantle without dragging the pain with you. Archangel Michael says your growth can now be measured by your reaction. You no longer flinch. You no longer spiral. Instead, you reflect. You discern. You see it differently. That's a spiritual milestone. That's what unlocks new realms. And that's why heaven is pressing play on this echo one final time. For recognition, not re-entry. The name no longer has access to your spirit, but the spirit of that season still carries a sacred message. Archangel Michael warns, if you skip this revelation, you'll mislabel your next assignment. You'll resist what feels familiar, even when it's sent by God. But once you properly decode what that person truly represented, you'll walk boldly into new connections, new partnerships, new alignments, without fear of repeated pain. The pattern is breaking now, because you finally see the purpose behind the press. What hurt you was heaven sent, for the sharpening of your discernment. Type I am anointed to get blessing 8884. You don't need to revisit conversations or memories. You need to revisit the version of you that was being birthed in silence. That's where the power lies. Archangel Michael says your voice changed in that season. Your posture shifted. Your walk became more spiritual than emotional. And now, you carry a fragrance only warriors carry. The scent of someone who's been through spiritual fire and didn't turn to ash, but became gold. Heaven honors that. And this final echo is a spiritual salute to what you endured, to what you became, to who you really are now. This is why your atmosphere has felt strange lately, like something is about to happen. Because it is. The echo of that name is heaven's announcement. Promotion is here. But the gate can only open when your spirit completes the circle. This isn't about forgiveness alone. It's about finalization. Archangel Michael says your spirit must rise above the story and stand in the strategy. You were chosen to live through what others would have died under. And now, that name is no longer a shadow. It's the sound of your strength. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 6906. Elevation always demands sacrifice, and sometimes that sacrifice is releasing what you thought you'd never revisit. Archangel Michael says heaven is preparing to launch you into a season you've prayed for, but one requirement remains: complete inner release. That blocked name has no hold on you now, but the memory still carries an unconscious imprint. And heaven won't let you drag even one spiritual thread into your new dimension. This echo is not emotional, it's surgical. A final cutting. A clean break at the soul level, not just the surface. Your healing was real, but your full unlocking still awaits. You don't owe that name closure, but you owe your soul completion. That's the reason it keeps returning in dreams, thoughts, random conversations. Archangel Michael says it's not about missing them. It's about missing the piece of yourself that never got to rise from that season. The one who had potential but didn't yet have permission. And now, on July 15th, heaven says permission is granted. To rise. To reclaim. To remove all weight that didn't originate in God's will. You blocked the number. Now it's time to unblock the revelation that was waiting behind the silence. I am rising to get the blessing 8799. There's nothing weak about remembering. There's power in recognition. When you stop fearing what hurt you, you master it. And that is exactly what's happening. Heaven has allowed this final whisper to approach, not to shake you, but to reveal that you are now the one in control. What once broke you now bows to you. The echo you hear isn't a ghost. It's God, reminding you of what you've overcome. And Archangel Michael says your strength has not gone unnoticed. The heavens are preparing a new scroll with your name. But you must enter this next phase clean. Clean of resentment. Clean of confusion. Clean of what-ifs. That's the spiritual condition heaven is waiting on. Archangel Michael says the enemy would love for you to ignore this moment, thinking the name returning is mere coincidence. But it is precise, divine timing. You've crossed into the hour of inheritance, and heaven will deliver what you're not spiritually prepared to protect. That name marked a war, and wars always leave behind residue. But now, it's time to sweep your spirit's floor and leave no trace of trauma, only testimony. It's the final step before promotion. I am anointed to get blessing 7550. You are not being asked to go back. You are being asked to go inward. To look into the places that still tense up when you think about them. To pause long enough to feel what you buried. And once you acknowledge it, release it. Not with resistance but with reverence. Archangel Michael reminds you, even the painful parts were part of your prophecy. And now, you carry something sacred. Something heaven entrusted to you because you didn't collapse. You ascended. That's why this echo comes with angelic instruction. You're not just remembering. You're writing. Write the narrative in heaven's ink. Instead of saying, "They broke me," say, "God rebuilt me through it." Instead of saying, "I regret it," say, "I was refined by it." Instead of saying, "I wish I'd never met them," Say, I now know who I am because of it. It's divine reversal. And Archangel Michael says the one who can say that with full honesty becomes a vessel for miracles. That name, once your wound, has now become your wisdom. You are being lifted, not because of the pain, but because of your power in rising from it. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 9216. The final unlocking is always the heaviest, but it is also the holiest. Archangel Michael says you are standing at the last gate before divine shift. Everything you've learned, survived, and grown into has led to this moment. And the name you blocked has re-emerged in the atmosphere not to delay you, but to deliver something you unknowingly left behind. It's not about the person. It's about what they represented, what they triggered, what they crack open in you that no one else could have reached. Heaven is not calling you backward. It's calling you higher, through full release. This is your final echo, a last loop of remembrance before the page fully turns. Archangel Michael says your spirit has now matured enough to see that name not as an interruption, but as a signal, a marker in your timeline where the old you died and the chosen you awakened. You didn't know it then, but heaven knew it. And now that the pain no longer holds you, you are ready to receive the blessing that pain once tried to hide. This is where full restoration begins, not in your emotions, but in your elevation. Type I am rising to get the blessing 6678. Heaven doesn't waste anything, not even heartbreak. That name has been heaven's instrument, even if the person never knew they were being used. You've tried to make sense of it, tried to calculate what went wrong. But Archangel Michael says there was nothing wrong. It was written, ordained, acquired, because your destiny was too great to remain asleep. That name carried the divine disruption necessary to wake up your calling. And now, the voice of heaven is louder than the memory. And the fire you once feared is now the fire you carry. This is divine reversal in real time. You've walked through the storm. You've passed the test. And now, Archangel Michael is placing in your hands the key to a realm that remained locked while you still carried fragments of that season. But now you are clear. Now you are clean. Now you are crowned. The whisper of their name no longer stings, it empowers. Because you see it for what it was, the beginning of everything. The pain was the portal, the rejection with a release. And your spirit is no longer tied to it, it's built on it. This is your holy shift. Type I am anointed to get blessing 8844. Heaven waited for this moment. Your angels have stood silently, watching, protecting, whispering. And now they rejoice, because you didn't just survive, you understood. And understanding is what qualifies you for overflow. You're about to see what that entire season was preparing you for. Divine assignments, divine relationships, divine territory. All of it now becomes accessible because you faced what others would have buried. You honored the echo. You answered the whisper. And now, the name that once pulled you down has launched you forward. Archangel Michael says the gates have opened. Your discernment is sharper. Your peace is unshakable. Your vision is divine. This is what it means to ascend. Not to float, but to walk with full awareness. And now you do. The past can no longer rob your future. The enemy can no longer recycle old names to unsettle you. Heaven has spoken. You are sealed in clarity. And with that seal comes power. Watch what happens next. Doors that were once shut will swing open. Paths that were once blocked will clear. Because you have now become one with the assignment. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 7001. Today, On July 15th, heaven has completed the cycle. The name that once echoed through your dreams, thoughts, and soul has served its purpose. Archangel Michael says the whisper will now quiet, not because you've forgotten, but because you finally understood. You were never being haunted, you were being healed. That name was never the ending. It was the beginning of your revelation. And now, your spirit stands tall, rooted, ready. The sound that once unsettled you has now become the sound of authority. You've retrieved every fragment. You faced every shadow. And now you walk forward, pull. This moment marks more than healing, it marks initiation. The blocked name was the final test before the scroll of your next season could be opened. And heaven is now unfolding it before you. With clean hands. With a clear mind. With an unburdened soul. Archangel Michael says you will no longer be triggered by the past, because your present is saturated in power. You have seen the divine reason behind the pain. You have reclaimed the tools buried in the memory. And now watch the heavens shift. Watch alignment chase you. Watch favor find you in places you thought were closed forever. Because you didn't just survive. You spiritually ascended. You didn't just move on. You moved higher. And now, the name that once echoed ends in silence. Not of loss, but of peace. Not of longing, but of legacy. That name is no longer a chapter in your story. It's the introduction to your calling. The echo is over. The assignment begins. Heaven honors your courage. The angels are watching. And Archangel Michael now declares, it is done. Go forward with confidence, clarity, and divine protection. You are chosen. You are rising. You are crowned. If this message has encouraged or inspired you, consider showing your support with a super thanks. Contributions of up to $20 go a long way in helping us continue creating content that uplifts and empowers. You can also support us directly through PayPal by clicking the Support Here link in the video description. Every donation helps us keep sharing messages that make a difference. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. Join us for ongoing prophetic insight, spiritual encouragement, and timely words to keep you walking in step with heaven's purpose. But I'm rising to get the blessing 9,999.